Again for this week Hot Talk session. And this week we have with us Mrs. Rawan Daman. She is an award-winning filmmaker and media consultant. She's here for the Palestine Advocacy Week, and she will be sharing with us on lobbying and digital activism for Palestine, right? And Mrs. Rawan Daman, would you like to say hi to the listener?
Hi for everybody. I'm so glad to be here today.
Yes, and she's a very, very talented woman. She is, like I said just now, an award-winning filmmaker. She has directed over 10 of documentaries that have been translated into a number of different languages, including sign language, right?
Yep.
That's very, very interesting. And she was also a TV anchor. Were you?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And and she also anchored for a radio talk show. And she is currently here for the Palestine Advocacy Week. And could you please tell us more about the Advocacy Week? What is it about and what you guys aim to do? What are the objectives?
We are very glad to be here with some other speakers to talk with the Malaysian in general audience, students, undergraduate, postgraduates, NGOs, activists, about the story of Palestine. Many people heard about Palestine, but they don't know details. They are sympathetic with the situation in Palestine. They know there are things that are injustice going there, but Palestine is geographically far away from here in Kuala Lumpur, and so people are not very familiar with the details. And they want to hear from Palestinian activists and people working in the field, what is the story of Palestine? We think that many people don't want this story to be out, and we as media people would like it to be out. And this is why we are happy to be on a radio station talking to everybody via online and also
Yes, we are
audio.
happy to have you too.
Yeah, so we will help Palestinians back home to get their story out.
All right. That sounds very interesting. And I think a lot of people out there, they do not understand what do you guys mean by the word digital activism. So what does digital activists actually do? And I know we live in a media landscape where what's viral outstages what's accurate, right?
Exactly.
And how do we overcome that? I mean, because people don't really know what's really happening in Palestine.
Yeah.
And
Long ago, in the past, there was, the big TV stations, the international TV station, radio stations that have this control over the story of Palestine and many other stories. Now you have all the social media that is somehow controlling this. We are, yes, posting freely on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Snapchat, all of this, but we are in reality rent those platforms. We are not the owners of those platforms. So even the algorithm of those platforms, they can get this story up viral or not. And so digital activism in particular needs to target how this story can go viral, and then people can understand what's happening, because you can have cheap content making. If you are accurate and you say the right things, people can verify this information. And now there is a lot of alternative media rather than the traditional, one-sided media. And people nowadays can really verify information and know what's true from what's not true and what's fake.
Exactly, but I mean, on social media, it's pretty hard to distinguish what's true and what's not true, right?
Yeah. You need even in education, in general media, in what your parents tell you. Nowadays, you need to verify. You need to do your responsibility of going and checking information.
Yep.
And good that we have now a lot of resources on Palestine. I launched a digital platform called PalestineRemix.com. PalestineRemix.com, where we have around 120 hours of documentaries on Palestine in several languages: Arabic, English, Bosnian, Turkish, and Spanish. And there, it's the result of 10 years of working with almost 30 filmmakers around the world. Because documentaries take a long time. When you start any documentary, it takes 1 year, 2 years, sometimes 4 years to finish 1 hour of documentary. So we decided to gather together all those documentaries and give them free for the people, where they can cut and paste, they can full search, and then reach to every single place this word was mentioned in the documentary, cut, paste, mix and match, and build their own story on Palestine and share it on social media. They can even download this
So
story.
it is an application where they can do that.
Yes.
Where they can do their own storytelling.
Exactly.
All right.
So because
That's
now
interesting.
people want to be active. They don't
Yes.
want to be passive, only watch things, only watch this documentary. No, I want to do something with it. Okay, what did you like about it? You can mix and match. Take this extract from this documentary, another extract from another documentary, mix and match and share with your friends on Facebook, for example, or download and take with you to the class and include it in your PowerPoint when you do something for your university or for your secondary school. So students, they don't have, the equipment to do filming, editing.
Yes,
it takes
that's
a bit
right.
of skill. It's also expensive.
It's very complicated,
but-
especially for people who lack technological literacy.
Exactly.
They
But-
might be at disadvantage.
Yeah,
right?
but now you have a huge content you can use for your own benefit. So digital activism is allowing people to use this content for their purposes. If they are interested in women issue, in defending prisoners, refugees, talking about peace, whatever you would like, you have content to play with.
All right. That sounds very interesting, but we will head on to the next song right now. So now we're going to listen to Yuna featuring Asha, Crush, and we will get back with Mrs. Rawan Daman in a bit. So we are back again with Miss Rawan, and while we were having our break just now, song break just now, I was asking her how was it like directing a film in Palestine? What are the challenges? And could you please tell us more? Share with us.
Yeah, Palestine is under a Zionist Israeli Jewish colonization. This project started over 100 years ago. And when Israel came in 1948, Palestine as the name was erased from all the maps. So in every international atlas before 1948, you had Palestine. Now there's no Palestine. So it's erased. And they want to erase the story of Palestine because
So Palestine is no longer a country; it's a state,
no,
is it?
No, it's not a state, it's not a country. It doesn't exist nowadays.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So basically, they erased Palestine from the map because they wanted to replace it with Israel. They want to replace this geographical entity to be a Zionist Jewish state, only for Jews. So Muslims and Christians, Palestinians are not allowed.
Oh.
And this is why they kicked out, there was an ethnic cleansing in 1948, and they kicked out 800,000 Palestinians. Now there are over 7 million Palestinian refugees outside of Palestine who are not allowed even to come and visit Palestine. Inside Palestine, there are Palestinians who still live. Inside Israel, 1.5 million. In Gaza Strip, which is a small, tiny area, around 2 million. In the occupied West Bank, 2 million. So you have 5 million Palestinians who really live under discrimination, apartheid regime. And those Palestinians, many of them are not allowed to travel. And many of them live under occupation, daily occupation, which means restrictions of every single step in your life and depriving you from all your rights.
Yeah.
One of the main things is the media. The media, radio stations, TV stations, documentaries, press is under oppression because the Israeli Zionist project, which is a colonial settler project. They want to bring settlers from all around the world and get them there and stay there. So it's a settler colonial project that is still going until today. So colonies are going on, building Israeli settlements, making roads only for Jews, Israeli Zionists, having an army, a full army that started in 1920, long ago, and still now, it's now the strongest 5th army in the world. So
Wow.
it's a military, very much place where
Yes.
Palestinians are controlled. And this is why the story of Palestine is controlled. And
Right.
for media people like me, people who want just to go and film, for example, in a location, the way from your TV station until the location, it might take 1 hour to reach. But in reality, you will never reach sometimes because there will be
Because there'll be
Israeli
a lot of
soldiers
restriction,
checkpoint that will say you are not allowed to cross this road. That's it.
So how do you actually film? I mean, under those restrictions?
Yeah, it's very difficult and you risk your life every single day. And we have journalists and TV anchors, radio people who were shot and killed because of this. So if you are a journalist or even a normal person and you go out of your home, you know you might not return. It's a daily thing. It's a very psychological, difficult thing to transfer to people here in Malaysia who live in peace. Because people don't understand the idea that how come you live in a constant fear of not being secured.
Yes.
Yeah, you leave,
People
you
do
go.
not understand that.
No, it's very difficult to understand it because you leave your home to go to the university and everybody know that you might not come back. You need to live with this every single day.
Every single day you live without knowing whether you'll come back home or not, right?
Exactly. For dads, moms, children, everybody. And some people even inside their home,
Yeah.
they were killed. They were shot and killed inside their homes. So
So you're
this
constantly
is
living in fear.
yes, but
And-
you learn how to live
Yep.
and live happily in spite of everything.
That's
So
good.
people have love stories, they live, they have weddings, they have children.
So do you try to include that in your film as well? I mean,
Yes, we did.
in spite
I
of
commissioned.
all the
Yeah.
heartbreaks.
Yes, I worked as a filmmaker for the last 15 years, and I also worked for Al Jazeera Media Network in Doha,
Oh,
Qatar,
okay.
as a commissioner for documentaries on Palestine. So I worked with other filmmakers, and one of the nice films we did was Gaza. Gaza Lives On.
Oh, okay.
Because people, many times hear about Gaza Strip, about the closure, about not having electricity. They have electricity only 2 hours every single day, and they think that how come people are living there? So we did 7 happy stories from Gaza, just to explain to people that this is part of the resistance. When you are under occupation, you cannot live in depression. You
Yes.
need to be happy and believe that your dream of liberation and getting freedom and having human rights for everybody, like everybody around the world, will come. Maybe we will not, maybe I will not live to see that day, to see Palestine back on the map and Palestine liberated. But I'm sure somebody will live to see that day and they will remember and say, some people worked for this day to come and now
Yes.
it came.
And thank God we have social media these days. We have digital platform
Yeah.
that serve as a main outlet for people to express their opinion. It's a main outlet for debate and also for people to publish their own content so
Yeah.
they can actually tell their own story.
Yeah.
Right.
The problem that many people have the information, but they don't know how to tell the story.
Yes.
That's
Exactly.
also
That's
part
also
of
another
our
barrier.
because in yesterday's training here in Kuala Lumpur, some people have the content. They know about the story of Palestine a bit, but when they try to explain it, they are not aware of the storytelling of how to tell the story. So
Yes.
they say, for example, we have 7,000 Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails. I said, okay, but people don't care about this number. Or they say 700,000 Palestinians have witnessed Israeli prison since 1967. That's true, that's right. But it's more effective to take a story of one prisoner
Yes.
and explain it and say this prisoner has this name. He spent the last 20 years in prison, over 10 years in one isolated cell. And this is a true story about a prisoner called Hassan Salame. And he is staying in this alone, isolated cell for now over 13 years. He's not allowed to have any visit from his family. And only a few years ago, one girl named Ghufran decided she wanted to get engaged to this man. And she decided, I want to get engaged to him, and started to write love stories, love letters for him via the Red Cross. And he started to write to her back. And they never met. Israeli authorities never allow them to meet, but they feel it's a kind of support for this person to feel that there is life. And although he has been sentenced to 34 life sentences,
Wow.
so he knows that he might never
He might never get out of
get
the
out,
prison, right?
because of the resistance he did to the Israeli occupation, although resistance is guaranteed by international law when you resist an occupation, settler colonialism in particular, but it gives him, a lot of courage to continue
Yes.
living and continue to have hope. So
That's
yes,
good.
hopeful stories are very important even when you have very sad stories in particular.
Exactly. And effective storytelling is the key to get the message around.
Yeah.
Right? And how exactly do you see the effectiveness of digital platform to mobilize support for Palestine?
Yeah, I think there is a big potential that has been utilized a bit, but not to the maximum,
Yes.
especially in English language, because the Zionist movement, part of its work, it does a lot of work in the media and in the digital platforms in English language. In Arabic language, they don't very much care to put a lot of content because the story has been there for a long time, but in English language, they get a lot to work. So we are not only working to put content about Palestine, but also to encounter the Zionist story. So the Zionists will say, for example, Palestinians left alone. They just 800,000 people left their homes alone, which is not true. Even Israeli historians, new Israeli historians, like, for example, I'm reading now a book for Ilan Pape, an Israeli historian, very famous. He teaches at Exeter University in England, and he wrote this book about the 10 myths about Israel. Because, they try to have a myth, build it, talk about it, and we need to analyze this myth. How come 800,000 people left alone? This is not true. There was a plan of ethnic cleansing, of genocide, how those people were kicked, how their homes till now are stolen by Israel, how the books inside the homes are in the Hebrew University till today. It's not only they stole the home, they stole
So
everything.
people are still living under oppression.
Yes, of course. It's a continuous thing.
Yeah.
And the grandchildren of the Palestinian refugees living in America, Australia, Malaysia, everywhere, they still say, we are Palestinians.
Yes.
And we want to go back to Palestine. We want to be allowed to visit Palestine. We want to visit where our grandparents were. It's like a human thing searching for your roots.
Yes.
Even if you have a passport, American passport, British passport, you live there, you have never been to Palestine, maybe you don't know the language, the Arabic language, but you feel something missing because your homeland was stolen. And it's a very complicated emotion to explain.
It is, indeed. And we will go for another song break before we continue our hot talk session. And the next song is by Ed Sheeran, Shape of You. We are back again with Miss Rowan. And now we're going to ask her, what are the roles of NGOs and youth in particular and students in helping to mobilize support for Palestinians? How do you see them?
Yeah, there's a lot of potentials in there because, and especially when there's big campaigns. For example, now we are preparing for a big campaign for the 100th anniversary of the Balfour Declaration. In the UK, in Britain, in 1917, the British government, via its foreign minister, Arthur Balfour, issued a letter from Arthur Balfour to the Zionist movement via Lord Rothschild, who was a very rich British Zionist Jew. And in that letter, the British government said, we will help the Zionist movement to make Palestine a Zionist Jewish state. At that time, Jews were less than 3% in Palestine. But we will help you get settlers from all over the world, Zionists from Europe in particular, to come to Palestine. And slowly, Britain, under the British mandate, because Palestine was under British mandate later on, it became, slowly, we had 500,000 Zionist settlers, Jewish, in Palestine, amongst 2 million Palestinians, Muslims, and Christians. And they gave them a lot of land. But how much land they will give them? They got 7% of the land. So in 1948, from 1917 until 1948, they got 7% of the land and 500,000 settlers among 2 million Palestinians. So the Zionist movement had one option only, and that is to do ethnic cleansing, genocide, and kick as much possible as Palestinian and get as much possible as land. And they got over 78% of Palestine, and the Palestinians were left with 22%. Later on, in 1967, they occupied everything. They took 100% of the land of Palestine. So as an NGO, we have a big NGO for Palestinians abroad, and we are launching a big campaign to say that Balfour was a part of a colonial project. And in this regard, students, NGOs, people who are working can do a lot, because the Zionists will have a big celebration for Balfour. They will have street parties. They will have music. They will say Balfour is a great man because he allowed us to have Palestine as a Zionist state. And in our case, we will say Balfour and the role of Britain is part of a colonial project that is still going until now. And people understand colonialization because it was applied in Australia, in New Zealand, in America, in South America, in South Africa. People understand what does it mean to have a settler colonialism. But this was in the 16th century, 18th century, 19th century. Palestine is still under the same concept, but nowadays.
Yes.
In nowadays, with the UN, with the international law, you cannot imagine that this is still happening nowadays. And this is where students can be a lot active to tell their... Sometimes the students will be more aware than their teachers.
Yeah,
so they
exactly.
can even, get their teachers aware, get their colleagues aware, get their families aware, and do something. And they have very creative idea. Maybe somebody will say, we'll do a musical play. Maybe somebody will say, we'll do a very funny demonstration in the street. Not just standing there having the signs. We'll have something more creative. Young people are very creative in what they can come out of. This is why always they come and ask me, what can we do? I say, do whatever you like.
Yes.
Don't try to imitate what the adults do. Maybe, the politicians will do a conference, will have a speech, will have a formal letter, but young people have the freedom to think, and they will come up with different ideas than what we think.
Yes,
when
young people have the freedom to express themselves, and like you said, young people are bursting with creativity. They're propelled by this drive, this enthusiasm. But the thing is, you were saying about how youth these days, they are more reactive, but it's okay, it's good to be reactive, but then how do you make it strategic instead of reactive?
Yes.
It's very important to be strategic instead rather than just reactive itself.
Yeah. In this case, for example, as it is an international campaign, when each country does its part, then it's strategic that many countries complain about this. We cannot have nowadays a strategic short-term plan for the freedom of Palestine because it's so difficult to do this. For at least what we want nowadays from a strategic point of view is awareness and real awareness.
Yes.
When you have the root awareness, then the second stage will be how to coordinate between those different places and people and NGOs and groups. Until now, we are primitive. We are in the first step, not in the second step.
Okay. So we are just you guys are just starting.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, the struggle of Palestine lasted for the last 100 years. But the problem that it was a very scattered work, and it came ups and downs for a long time. And this is why we are trying to build on what others did. We are not the people who are starting it. We are building cumulative of what others have done. But in the international atmosphere, in the NGOs around, we are still making sure that people are aware of the reality of Palestine, so that when we come to the next step of coordinating the work, everybody will be on the same background and not coming from different understandings.
Exactly. And I mean, we live in a world where we are so connected. We are more connected than ever, but yet we are very distant in such that we are becoming more reserved than opening up.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? And we tend to talk about isolationism rather than cooperation.
Yeah. It's
And we're building borders rather than bridges. And
Yeah,
what
Shafiq,
have you
I
got to
think I think the most important is the huge content that we are bombarded with. So the social media, from a way, is a democratic tool where you can add your opinion, discuss, but
it gives you the right to express.
yes, but then when you express one time, 10 times, and you feel that nothing changed, for example, or you are bombarded with a lot of content, you feel more isolated. You feel more,
Exactly.
it's not the information, it's the knowledge. Sometimes we think that bits of information will make us the knowledge. No, knowledge is gathering, connecting those information and having a vision.
Yes.
And many people nowadays lack this vision and lack the wisdom of how to use this
That's why it's
information.
isolating you from
Yeah.
the real world.
Yeah.
You're
And
living in an alienated world at the moment.
and this is happening all over the world, not only in Malaysia, everywhere it's happening. It's happening in Palestine, even for Palestinians, because they think that maybe I will do this thing on social media and that's enough. No, it's not.
Yeah.
You need to have a clear role. And I think the solution to this is go back to your values. What are the values of you as a human being that you really care about? Do you
Exactly.
care about justice? Then if you have an injustice event in the street near your neighborhood, you need to stand up and speak and say this is not right. And the same happens if there's an injustice that happens in the States of America or an injustice that happens in Palestine. Then you have the connection of why I am doing this. Because I am, as a human being in this life, I need to do something. It's not about being, a go to work, eat and sleep. That's not enough.
Yeah.
You need to do something that you will be proud of. And when you go back home, you look at the mirror and you think, okay, I did what I can. I am a one individual. I am not a state. I am
Yes.
a one individual. What did I do today? I did this good thing.
All right, that's right. And we'll go for a song break before we continue to talk about lobbying and digital activism. Hello, guys. We are back again, and now we're going to be talking about the peace process. And during our break just now, Ms. Rawan was telling me that in Palestine, people above the age of 50 are allowed to go to the mosque, but not for people under the age of 50.
Yes.
And what does that lead to, actually? 'Cause
In many places, in Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem, in the Ibrahimi Mosque in Hebron, the Israeli occupation has this system of having no specific rules. So on some days, they will allow only women and children, no men at all. Sometimes they will allow men over 50 only to get in, no young people. So always they are putting Palestinians on their edge, that you are not allowed to do simple things like worshipping, like visiting. And then the Palestinians feel,
basically, you're not allowed to pray.
no,
If
you
you're
are
not
not.
above 50.
No. Even me, as I am a Palestinian,
Yes.
I am born in Amman, Jordan. I can go to the West Bank, the occupied West Bank, and live there. But I am not allowed to visit Jerusalem, even for worship, for praying. I'm not allowed to visit because I am 38 years old. I need to be over 50
In order to pray.
in order to pray.
All right, in a mosque.
Yes, in the most
That's
important mosque.
crazy.
Yeah, in the most important mosque for all Muslims and most important mosque for Palestinians. Not only me, millions of Palestinians are not allowed, although they live in historical Palestine. They live in the occupied West Bank and in Gaza Strip. We are not talking about refugees, 7 million people outside. We are talking about Palestinians under occupation. Those people are not allowed to visit Jerusalem. And this is why they are now deprived from their rights of citizenship rights, religious, cultural, because Al-Aqsa Mosque for us is not only a mosque, it's a cultural, historical place, It's when you go there, you visit a very old, it's 144 dunams. It's a big area where you have a lot of monuments, a lot of historical places.
Yes.
It's all Islamic waqf. It's part of the Islamic Trust and Foundation. So when you go there, it's like visiting your history, connecting with your roots.
Yes.
And you are not allowed even to visit this place, take a picture there, show it to your friends. And this is only because you are Palestinian. If you are an American coming
For a visit.
for a visit, okay, you are allowed.
I came across an article last night. It says that Palestine is one of the uprising tourism spot.
tourism,
Yes.
In
It's
Israel,
becoming
they
a
try,
tourist attraction.
Yeah, they tried in Israel to attract tourists and especially Christian pilgrimage. They have 2 million Christians coming to visit the Holy Land.
Yeah.
But the ironic thing that they take them to the wrong places. Because some of the most important places for Jesus Christ
Yeah.
is Bethlehem, which is under Israeli occupation, the Nativity Church, and
Where do they take them?
they take them to the wrong places and tell them that those are the places. We
Okay.
did a nice documentary on this. It's called The Forbidden Pilgrimage. It's on YouTube.
So
Forbidden
they are
Pilgrimage.
deceiving their own people
Exactly. And the tourists.
and the tourists. Yes,
The
of course.
tourists, okay, not only the Zionists themselves, in their education system, in their media, they are deceiving them,
Yeah.
but also the tourists coming from other places are deceived because they take them to several places and they don't show them the apartheid system. Even in Nazareth, where there are Palestinians, Israelis, Palestinians, Christians, and Muslims who have Israeli passports, they don't allow the tourists to encounter with them or talk with them. So they don't want to have, the Zionist dream is to have all Palestinians vanish, disappear. That's the Zionist dream. And to do this, they did a dehumanizing for the Palestinians.
But why are they dehumanizing people?
Yeah, because you cannot convince a logical human being. Now, the Israeli Zionist Jew is a human being.
Yes,
he
of course.
has logics, okay? How you will convince him as a soldier to kill with cold blood? How to convince it to be very easy to kill the person? By dehumanizing the other.
Yes.
By telling him, since he's a child until now, that the Palestinian is not a human. Now, for us Palestinians and for many people around the world, it's not logical because we look at the Israeli, at the Zionist, even if he's a bad person, a human being.
Yes, of
We can never dehumanize that person. But the system, the Zionist system, since much early in the 20s, in the 30s, they dehumanized the Palestinians to be able to expel them, to erase their history, to change the name of the villages, to demolish their homes. So the dehumanizing helps you to do all of this later on. Not just to kill this person, not just to do the massacre, not just the genocide, but to erase the history. So nobody will know that there were Palestinians in here
But
before.
how about the Palestinians themselves? Are they still hopeful of the future? Are they still optimistic about the future? I mean, given that you live in fear for so long,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it overwhelms your thinking. It
Yeah, the Israeli occupation
compromises
managed...
your logic and compassion too, right?
The Israeli occupation managed to control the time of the Palestinians.
Yes.
They played with the idea of time. So when you go to Palestine, there's no specific appointments. So we say, okay, we'll meet tomorrow at 9, maybe. If nothing happens,
All right.
because time is not, you cannot control the time, which means you cannot control your life, which means that Palestinians, many of them are depressed. But because the oppression is so high, and you have a justice case, you are sure that you have the justice case, this gives you the motivation to keep the resisting and keep the struggle and believe that there will be a better day. I always say that, when you are that Palestinians, this is Samih al-Qasim, a very famous Palestinian poet who passed away. He told me once I met him, and I told him I am depressed a bit from the situation. He said, Rawan, depression is a luxurious thing in Palestine. Palestinians are not allowed to be depressed Maybe a rich person who has nothing in life, he will say, oh, I am depressed. But for Palestinians, you are not allowed to say you are depressed. You need to work and work hard for the day of freedom.
All right. That's right. And I mean, living in fear for so long, doesn't it lead these youth? I mean, wouldn't it encourage radicalization?
Yeah, I'm sure that,
How does
not living in fear, but in no situation
no,
always.
situation, yeah.
If you
You
are,
become rebellious.
yeah, if you are in a small family, nuclear family,
Yes.
your dad and your mom always say no for everything. You are not allowed to go to the park. You are not allowed to meet your friends. You are not allowed to watch TV. You are not allowed to use computer.
That's
Okay,
right.
then you say, okay, I want to break all of this. I will not, because human beings are like flying birds.
Yes.
You need to grow their wings. Even for your children, you need to have rules, not iPad and iPhone all the time. Okay,
Yes.
that's fine. But you need to have those rules logical and to discuss with your kid and to allow him to do things and not to do things and encourage him to build his own character. And this is the same situation. If you have a nation and you keep pressing them, for sure some of them will say, look, we want to do things in our way.
Oh, in our own way.
Yes,
Yep.
which might be violent and which might be very violent. But
It's
always
true.
the percentage of this is small.
It's still very
Always.
small. It's always very small.
It's
yeah.
always, because this is like the human nature. Some people will say, no, we want non-violence resistance. Some people will say, I will concentrate on education. Some people will say, we'll concentrate on media. Some will say, no, I want to do violence. And in this case, you can understand why they are violent.
Yeah.
Because they have been so much oppressed that everything is you are not allowed to do. When people are not allowed to travel, many Palestinians inside the occupied territories are not allowed to travel for whatever reason. Okay, they dream of seeing an airplane because there's no airport, and they never will be allowed to leave and get into this airplane. They see it on TV, and some of them will live, die, and they will never be allowed to travel.
Yes.
It's something that we take for granted. We go we have some money, we say, okay, we will go for our trip. We'll have a tourist trip to our neighbor country, blah, blah, blah. So we travel. We take it for granted. But those people, Palestinians under occupation, are on no travel list.
All right.
They cannot travel.
Of course. I'm pretty sure that's what's happening. And so what are you guys actually doing to help improve the situation?
There is a lot of things going on. I am a member of the popular conference for Palestinians abroad.
Yes.
We had this big conference in Istanbul in Turkey in February 2017, where we invited everybody who would like to come from outside Palestine, because inside Palestine they are under occupation, outside Palestine to come and visit. And we were surprised that 5,000 Palestinians from 50 countries came. One Palestinian I met came from the Ecuador in South America. And he doesn't speak Arabic, he only speaks Spanish. And he came to the conference. So I told him, why did you come? Why you traveled all the way from the Ecuador to Istanbul to attend this conference, popular conference for ordinary people? And he said, I was born, my parents never told me I am Palestinian. They told me I come from the area of the Middle East. And then when I became a poet, he writes poems in Spanish language. He started to search for his roots. He found out that he's Palestinian, and he came to attend the conference. And he was very emotional to meet all those people from 50 different countries who think and believe they are Palestinians. So what we are trying to do is gathering those Palestinians from all over the world, because they are refugees scattered everywhere. They work in different places, different countries, under different passports and under different circumstances, at least to get them to work together in harmony to help Palestine. And we have a lot of people in Chile, in Brazil, in Canada, who want to work for Palestine and want to do something and feel, even if they are the 5th generation away from Palestine, that we still have a contribution to our country.
And where do you think you are from where you started?
I think we are very well. I mean, the conference when I attended, I was anchoring, the thing, and I
Yes.
came out of the stage and I saw 5,000 Palestinians
Yeah.
from 50 countries in the hall. It was a very emotional moment. You discover that you are not alone, because
That's
when we
right.
work, each of us alone in a small NGO, small organization, we think that we are alone. And I think this gave a lot of encouragement to people to network together. And when you network, you get much more effective.
That's right. We are definitely stronger together.
Yeah.
And let's head to our last song before we end our session.
All of their songs are so nice.
Thank you. It was Pick and Hurry. And the next song is by Rihanna, Love the Way You Lie. This is our last session, Miss Rawan. And what are your hopes? I mean, in terms of having digital platform to mobilize support for Palestinians to get the message out there to everyone around the world so that they know exactly what is happening in Palestine, because the things that we read online can be very misleading. And if you try to Google Palestine, like what I did last night, I could barely find anything that I could comprehend, that I can brain. It's really hard to brain it, because first it says Palestine is a country, and then it's no longer a country. Palestine is a state, and then it says it's no longer a state. And you were telling me Palestine is not a country, not a state, and it's pretty much non-existent at the moment, right?
Yeah, it was a country.
It was a country.
It was a country.
until
and
it's deleted
Yes,
off
exactly.
the map.
Yes,
Because
until it's
Palestine is no longer in the map.
no. If you open any atlas,
Yep.
international atlas, anywhere in the world, you cannot find Palestine. You will find only Israel, and you will find maybe Palestinian occupied territories, because
Yes.
in the UN international law, this is the term used, Palestinian occupied territories, but there's no Palestine. This is why we called our project that we launched for digital platform Palestine Remix, PalestineRemix.com, because we wanted to put Palestine on the digital map. We know Palestine does not exist on the international atlas or map. So if you tell somebody, I will go to Palestine, they will say, where is Palestine on the map? They will search,
Yeah.
and they will not find Palestine. And this is why in the digital platform, in the Google, on Facebook, we want more and more people to use the word Palestine, because we think if we all believe that there is Palestine, there will be Palestine one day. That's the whole idea. And this
Exactly.
is why Palestinians, I have a Jordanian passport. Another friend of mine has an American passport. If I say I am Jordanian, he say I am American, nobody will no longer say we are Palestinians. And generation after generation, people will forget about Palestine.
Yeah.
And this is why we want to stress about Palestine. And this is why I did my documentary Al Nakba, which is a 4 hours documentary translated to 10 different languages, as you said, Shafiqa, including the sign language, because
Yes.
I figured out sign people who are deaf don't have anything about Palestine that they can understand the story. And this is the story of Palestine. Al Nakba, if you write on YouTube Al Nakba plus Rawan Daman, you will find a 4 hours documentary about the story of Palestine from 1799 until today. Because I wanted the people to have, you can read maybe 60 books, 70 books to understand the story. Nobody is having the time to do this. So I tried to summarize it in a documentary about Palestine. Later on, I did a 5 hours documentary about Palestinians inside Israel. Some Palestinians, 1.5 million, have Israeli passports. So they are Palestinians, but have Israeli passports. So it's a very complicated story. So I did a 5 hours documentary about their story. And later I did The Price of Oslo, a 2 hours documentary about the peace process between the Palestinians and the Israelis. Because Israel in 1993 has this big celebration in the White House. We want to make peace with the Palestinians. It was a technique to sustain the Israeli occupation. It was one of the major big techniques to sustain the occupation and make the international world pay the expenses of the occupation, because because of the international funds for Palestinians, for education, for health, for all of this, the international world is paying the expenses that the occupation should pay, because the occupier in any country should take care of the people under occupation and should never change the historical places, the mosques, the churches under occupation. And Israel used this technique called the peace process, which is a process that never ends. It
Right.
started 25 years ago and there's nothing. And even there's more colonies, more settlements, more occupation after the start of the peace process. So I decided to do, and this was signed in Norway, in Oslo. So I went to Norway, I filmed there, filmed with Israelis, with Palestinians, and with Norwegians to make the price of Oslo about the story of the peace process
Can you
for
please
2
tell our
hours.
listener how they can access to the documentary?
It's all on YouTube.
It's all on
Just
YouTube?
write Rawan Damen channel,
Okay.
Rawan Rawan, Damen Damen,
Yes.
and write the name of the film, Al Nakba, Owners of the Land, and the Price of Oslo. Somebody today told me that Rawan means a meat thing, in a meat bone in Malaysian language. Rawan.
Rawan means meat.
The bone of the meat, something like
The
this.
bone of the meat.
I'm not sure.
I don't exactly speak the best Malay.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't understand the meaning of Rawan. Apparently Rawan means the bone of the meat. Is it? Adib?
Yes, tulang rawan.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's
So
people
according
will
to
not forget to.
Our Malay
It's a
expert.
soft bone, right?
Yeah,
Is it rawan soft bone?
I've never heard of that word.
yeah.
Yeah.
So people can remember my name to
Yeah.
search on YouTube and find the documentaries. Just write Rawan Damen channel and you can access those documentaries. It's really worth to watch the documentaries. I even encourage people to study those
Yes.
documentaries because you will learn a lot and you will be able, whenever somebody asks you any question, what is Zionism,
Yeah.
what is Israel, what is Palestine, to be sure what you are answering.
And my last question for you. Okay, so we are using digital platform as a mean to mobilize the message around the world, but how about those who have very limited access to technology? And I mean, like, these can be the elder groups
Yeah.
who don't really know how to make use of technological devices, and it could also be those who doesn't have much access to education, so they
Yes.
have very little technological literacy
Yeah.
to engage meaningfully, with the online content. How do you reach out to them?
Yeah, we have a
Because not
problem.
everyone is privileged. you see.
Exactly. We have a problem reaching out to those people. Usually what we do when there is an activist who is digitally equipped and know about, he then goes to those remote places, meet the elderly people, talk to underprivileged
So
people,
tell them the story
personally. And this,
Physically.
yes, and this is what sometimes I am doing and other activists are doing, but it needs a large thing. It needs a state. It needs a government to support this, to reach to those people. But what we do is like we have this training for 10 people, 20 people, 30 people, and we think that those people will be the ambassadors to talk to other people. And we think that we want to invest more in the future generation. We want the young people to invest because this is a long-term project. The awareness, maybe when we talk with the students nowadays, those will be the leaders of tomorrow, and then things will change. Because for Palestine, our main problem are the politicians around the world who are not doing something to stand with the justice. So we think maybe now, when the students are pro-Palestine in many universities around the world, even in the States of America and in England and in Germany and in France, the students nowadays are much more campus pro-Palestine than in the 70s. There is a big
okay.
change and there's a positive change. So maybe those students, when they become influential,
Education is a powerful weapon.
yeah, when they become influentials, when they become the politicians of tomorrow,
Yes.
things will change.
Yes, I hope for that as well for Palestine. I mean, time is changing, landscapes are changing quickly, not just politically, economically, but every spheres of life is changing.
Yeah.
And I really hope that you guys continue to stand together.
Yeah,
Because
hopefully.
if you turn your back on each other, you'll never meet eye to eye, right?
Of course. Yeah, that's 100%.
And what are your last messages to the people out there who are listening to us right now?
Just everybody listening to us, follow your personal dream.
Yes.
Always don't give up for anything. Don't listen to people who will tell you don't do this, don't study this, don't work this. If you have the passion, if you work hard, you will reach. And remember, there are your brothers and sisters in the humanity, the Palestinians out there. If something small you have done here in Kuala Lumpur, in Malaysia, it will give them a lot of hope that things will change one day.
Thank you. That was a very powerful message.
Thank
We
you
are
very
happy
much.
to have you in the studio. You
I am
serve as a
also-
beacon of hope for, women out there, for youth out there, I'm pretty sure. And yes, like Miss Rawan has just told us, we can talk about disruptive technology, we can talk about the future of artificial intelligence, but we can never buy compassion, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important to have passion in everything that you do in life. And this is our last song. It has no relation with compassion at all or passion. It's called Bailando by Enrique Iglesias. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll meet again next week with the hottest topic in town. Thank you. Have a good evening, guys.